Hey y'all, for this video I was asked by a student if I could just kind of walk through source finding and kind of looking at sources and talking about what makes sources credible or which ones we might use and which ones we might not use. So I'm going to do two things really. One is I'm going to look on our school databases and kind of show you how I would search through those a little bit. And then number two, I'm going to go onto Google and just Google and talk through how I might look at some sources and questions I would have about those sources being credible or not credible. So let's start first with what I would recommend, which is going to Clark Library and on here, of course, clicking for information, research databases, etc. I'm going to go to our online resources. You should be super familiar with this at this point of year, excuse me. And you have all these options here. So you could go to New York Times, you could go to EBSCOhost, JSTOR, SIRS issue research database. I would say for this research paper, SIRS is good. Gale, Opposing Viewpoints in Context is good. EBSCO is good. And JSTOR is really good. New York Times is good for some contemporary stuff as well. But those are the ones I would really hunt for. Now, as you know, if you use a lot of these databases, you can get those bibliographic entries, those works cited entries really easily. So that's one benefit. Now, the one I like a lot here is called EBSCOhost. I like all of these for different reasons. But I like EBSCOhost. I use this when I'm researching stuff for my grad program. I go to all databases. And then I usually choose this one, Academic Search Premier, because as it says here, it's a multidisciplinary database providing full text for more than 3,100 journals, including full text for nearly 2,700 peer-reviewed titles. That's super nice because those journals are really, really helpful. This one's also really good. This one's specific to education, which is nice if you're doing something on education, literature and whatnot there. So Eric is really nice for that kind of search. But obviously, if you look through these and kind of read through these, you can find a lot of good stuff. If you're looking for something more contemporary, this newspaper source might be good to look for or look through. And then, yeah, anyway, we'll go back. I'm just going to start up at the top and I'm going to say Academic Search Premier. Let's start here. So here, I'm going to use the fake topic of returning to school. So like during a pandemic, should we return to school? That's going to be my research paper. So I'm going to just type in return to school and just search. It's super, super broad, right? And here initially I'm getting 9,403 results, which is a lot. One of the things I need to think about is, for instance, here, this article, it's great. It's PDF full text. It talks about school students returning to school, quite literally in the title. The problem, of course, is unlike this one, which talks about COVID-19 pandemic, this one is from 2009. So it's not helpful, but it's still the number 2 source. So one thing I'm going to do here right away, and a lot of you will do this for your topics because they're more contemporary, is down here, I don't want anything from 1906. In fact, for mine, because it's about the pandemic, I can actually say I want to limit this from 2020 to 2021. And then I narrow that down to 459 titles, which is really nice. So I have this one about the COVID-19 pandemic. And then I have this one also about COVID-19. So I can kind of look at these subjects and start to look through and say, like, does this fit? This one, the path to reopening schools, might, but I'm kind of surprised it doesn't say COVID-19 in it. So I might avoid that for right now and keep looking through. Here we go. Here's another COVID-19. Here's one, anxiety, unison. So I can start to kind of browse through those subjects and start to see, does this fit what I'm looking for? And then, of course, what's really nice about these is if I click on this one on the PDF, I can take a look and see what this is about. Let's see. This is specifically from May, and it does look like it's about the pandemic and people being out of work. Yep, COVID-19. So this is going to be good. So first thing I'm always going to do with the source is just scan over it and look for keywords that I'm interested in learning about, so that hopefully, or interested in identifying, so hopefully it can help me to say that this article has potential. One trick you can do if you ever use it is you can do Control F and use your search for different terms. Control F on a PC keyboard, or I think it might be Command F on a Mac. And then you can find those keywords and just it might expedite that process. So if this is good, again, this is one that I'm going to download and I'm going to keep in my Notability file. So that's kind of the process that I'm going to do when I'm looking for information. The other thing that I might do to limit some of these sources is I might limit which ones of these I want. It's contemporary, so I know there might not be as much academic writing on it. It's not bad here, 289, but definitely magazines, newspapers, I'm going to limit those. I don't need really trade publications or reviews. So again, those are some different ways to limit what you're searching for there. Now let's take a look at if I just go to Google and I say return to school. Okay, if I click on return to school, I'm going to get a lot of local stuff because it knows I'm in Portland because I, am identified as in Portland. I think Google has that information. So that's why I'm getting some local information. I'm also going to get some websites like healthychildren.org, which sounds super legit. But if I click on it, let's take a look. It's powered by pediatricians, trusted by parents. That looks pretty good. It's American Academy of Pediatrics. That looks even better. So as soon as I start seeing some of these elements, I might start saying, okay, this looks like it might be more credible than not. So it seems like it has that credibility. Let's scroll down, though, always to the bottom of a website and take a look at some things. There's a couple things you want to zero in on. Number one, it's good that they have a copyright and that copyright is updated to 2021. If this copyright says something like 2019, 2018, anything but the current year, that's one red flag that should alert you really quickly that maybe it's not credible. Also, you can look at things like down here, it says there's an About Us page. You can click on that and learn about the group. You can also look at their editorial policy. This is really important. This is saying what they publish and why they publish. It kind of gives their focus on what their bias might be. Now, even though this policy was effective in 2018, those policies tend to run for several years. So that doesn't need to be updated like right away. And then the About Us should give things like a mission. There we go. So it has their mission statement. It has their history. It tells you exactly who kind of writes for them or who their audience might be. So this is really good. So this website I'm looking at and I'm saying, yes, this appears to be credible. Again, American Academy of Pediatrics. Versus just looking at something and saying, well, it says healthychildren.org. That must be credible. They seem positive about healthy children. We want to make sure to do that investigation. Some of these articles or positions you're going to recognize and say like, okay, this is probably credible because it's the Fairfax County Public Schools, or this is the cdc.gov. So those things you can narrow in on pretty quickly. The challenge is going to be for some of you when you are looking into topics and you come across some of these and you're like, what is NASPLINE? There we go. It's the National Association of School Psychologists. So we might look into that even further. But let's keep looking down through. Now, what about this one? The Hetchinger Report. Okay, so let's click on this. And again, this one is covering innovation and inequality in education. And this is an opinion piece. So what's really good about this is it identifies that it's an opinion piece. That's good. That's proper use. And we see, though, that this is from November 12th, 2020. So that is during the pandemic. That would work. That is clear. Now, when I click the author here, I get this little sign up thing. But I wish it would take me to a biography. I don't know who this person is. So sometimes what I'll do is a quick Google just to see who Morgan Polikoff is. And I can kind of look through and see if there's some kind of information that's going to give us knowledge about who Morgan Polikoff is. And if this is the same Morgan Polikoff, this is pretty credible, right? Associate Professor of Education at University of Southern California. That looks really pretty good. I wish that would be included, however, on this website. And that makes me a little bit disinclined to use this website. But I do like so far that they have an option for letters to the editor. Let's see what else they might have. Do they have an about us? Here we go. Here's an about. And I can see that they do have some pictures of their staff. They have a mission statement, so this helps. We can see what their mission is. It's a nonprofit newsroom that fills the gap of whatever the gap is there that you could read about. So anyway, I've done some digging there on that website, and I think confirmed that this looks like it's worth looking into. Now, if you followed along with me for those last two websites, you see how much longer that takes, because it's my job as the researcher to verify that those websites are credible versus just going to something like EBSCOhost or Gale or whatever that might be on our Jesuit databases and seeing that they're credible. Also, I'm going to have to create from scratch those bibliographies. That's not to say don't use them, but it is to say it takes more work to look through websites just on Google versus going into the databases. So my recommendation is always going with the databases. But if you're doing something super contemporary, like the topic of returning to schools, you might need to use something beyond the databases. You might need to go into Google. If that's the case, what you saw there is kind of the process you need to go through to figure out if something's credible or not. Let me know if you have questions on that or if questions arise for you. And please always feel free to email me a source if you're like, does this seem credible? I did the steps you talked about. I looked through it, but I'm not quite sure. So feel free to send me that source, and I'm happy to kind of look through it with you and say, like, I don't know about this. If you're at all hesitant with a source, I wouldn't use it. Just kind of rule of thumb, like, if you're not sure it's good, there's probably other sources that have the opinion you're looking for, or you feel like you need something else for, that can give you that information. Remember, in the process of this paper, it should be about doing all the research first, then coming to your position. If you do it that way, you actually should have most of the research by the time you do your research question and your thesis. If you do it the other way, that's where this gets really challenging, because you're starting to look for things that will fit your narrative, that will fit your research question. So don't do it the way where you write a thesis and then try to justify it through research you find online. You want to start with the research, figure out what a position is, and then write a thesis from that. Hope that helps. Again, let me know if you need anything.